evening and welcome to Information Please, your Peoria Public Library on the air, bringing you information about your library and your community. And for this evening's program, I've brought back one of Peoria Public Library's favorite employees who's retired and gone on to Bradley University. So Linda Aylward has joined us once again to tell us about a whole new exciting treasure trove of things that you can find in Peoria. Hi, Linda.
Hi, Tricia. Thanks for having me.
Yeah, we miss you so much, but we know you're up at Bradley.
I'm close by.
Yeah, at the Bradley University, Cullum Davis Library. And so that's exciting. And I just wanted to get an opportunity, because I don't think we've ever had much on this show about what you can find at Bradley, but it's a natural partnership if you can't find what you need at Peoria Public or find additional things at Cullum Davis. So why don't you tell us what you've been finding since you've been there?
Well, I've been there less than 6 months, so I'm still learning the collection. Yeah. I work in the Special Collections Center on the 3rd floor of the Cullum Davis Library. And Special Collections Center is a collection of a multitude of different individual collections, I guess. I'm going to overuse that word, but that's most descriptive, that either belong to the university itself or are on loan from other organizations. And the Special Collections Center has a really interesting history. It officially debuted in 1979, and at that time it was called the Virginius H. Chase Collection Center, named for a very famous Illinois naturalist and historian who was a descendant of Bishop Philander Chase, and who was actually the person who preserved a lot of the bishop's materials and correspondence for many, many years. And it has grown over time, and during the different renovations at Cullum Davis Library, it has its own archive space now on the 3rd floor. And it is temperature, humidity controlled, light controlled, because those are always factors which can affect the stability of items in an archive. And it's in a very secure area. When people visit us, they'll have to sign in at the main desk when they enter the library building, and then they'll have to ring the doorbell on the 3rd floor to be buzzed into the department. So it's a very secure environment for the materials and their use.
What are the hours there? Do you have to have appointments, or how does that work?
Well, we are open Monday through Friday, 9 a.m. to 4:30 p.m. It's always a good idea to call ahead and let us know when you intend to visit, and we can kind of feel out what type of research that someone wants to undertake. Basically, the success of the research, since it is an archive, is going to be based on the amount of time and effort that the individual client coming to us wants to put in. We are very limited staff, so if it's something very simple that we can go pull a file and find an answer for, we would be more than happy to do so. But most people who come to us want to do in-depth research into an archival collection. So it is good to notify us. You can call us at 677-2822 during our business hours, or leave a message and we'll contact you again. There's a whole range of different types of media that are part of this Special Collections Center. We have books, of course, and pamphlets, vertical files, which are collections of small literature and ephemera. We have stereopticon views in our collection, scrapbooks, photographic images, negatives, slides, diaries, maps, atlases, magazines, of course. And it is a collection that you need to use in the collection center itself. It doesn't leave that room, so it doesn't check out to go home with you. Although we can make limited photocopies of certain parts of the collection for 15 cents a copy, or we can arrange for scans, depending on what the individual client's needs are.
Right, and probably what the item is
and what the item is, and who has ownership of the item also comes into play as far as signing a use agreement if it belongs to the Historical Society collection, for example.
Right, right. Okay.
There are some very interesting items that I made note of, since a lot of people aren't familiar with what they may find. So
yes, I have no idea what's there.
Before we talk about individual collections, I thought it might be interesting just to talk about a few select items that are found within the collection center. There's an incomplete Gutenberg Bible that was printed in 1457.
Wow.
That is part of special collections. Thomas Jefferson's notes on the state of Virginia that were printed in 1794 are part of special collections. We have lots of artwork. There is a volume of original floral prints by 19th century French painter Pierre Redouté, and landmark photographic journal that was edited by Alfred Stieglitz, and something that I'll probably talk about a little more in depth as we move on to the individual collections, but always a popular item is the set of cranberry glass, the luncheon set that was once owned by Mrs. Bradley, who founded Bradley Polytechnic Institute in 1897, which became Bradley University.
Yeah, Bradley alums may have recently seen that in their alumni magazine. There was a nice photo and story about the cranberry glass. We
also have a rare edition of a 1777 map on display in the Sturrock room inside the library building that was used to set the U.S. boundaries at the Treaty of Paris. Copies of that map or prints of that map are very rare, and that's something that is on display in the building but not within the Special Collections Center that people might be interested in knowing about.
Oh yeah, particularly if you're studying those time periods of history or just out of curiosity to be able to see that.
Sure. Now, how about if we talk a little bit about some of the major collections that are part of the center?
That would be great. That would be great.
Now, I may not be able to cover them all today, but I'll try to give little bits and pieces of interesting facts about them. We have the archives of the Illinois chapter of APCO, which is the Association of Public Safety and Communications Officers. Their collection, they have membership that's drawn from law enforcement agencies, emergency medical services, fire departments, military units. It's the world's largest public safety radio users group.
Oh, okay.
And their collection is housed within Special Collections Center. And you can actually go online from a link on the webpage, go to Bradley University, or go to bradley.edu, and then follow the links through the Special Collections Center to view digital searchable information from APCO, or you can go online at http://apcohistory.org and actually search many of the things in their collection. They have the chapters, files, and records, proceedings of the annual conferences from 1935 into the 1950s. They also have their APCO Bulletin publication beginning in February 1935 forward. So it is quite an extensive collection. And very, very interesting. I really didn't know much about this when I came on board.
I was going to say, why would people want to research that in particular?
A lot of people are interested in public safety communications.
Oh, okay.
And there are, this is just the Illinois chapter, there are other chapters nationwide also. So it's good to preserve their archive in a controlled environment, and they have students that digitize and make the information available to their members. The Bradleyana collection, of course, is all about Bradley University archival and artifactual materials on the history of the university. All kinds of things that you would find that are part of Bradleyana. You would find yearbooks, Originally the yearbook, which is now the Inaga, was the Polyscope. We have Polyscopes dating back to 1901.
Wonderful.
We have the newspaper, which was originally the Tech, and now it's the Bradley Scout, that a lot of people will be familiar with the Scout.
Oh, yes.
We have scrapbooks, photograph collections, videos, and sound recordings related to the history of the university, things that are pertaining to specific departments of the university also. Some of the more interesting items are some of the music associated with the school. I love music collections. We even have wearing apparel. We have a cheerleading outfit that was Claire Miller's from 1937. I believe she might have been an early female cheerleader.
Yeah,
I think in the old days
then it was the guys
that dominated.
The cheerleading.
That's on file as well. We have, of course, the Bradleyana collection dealing with Lydia Moss Bradley, the founder of the school. In fact, many things that were owned by Mrs. Bradley, that's how the Bradleyana collection got its start. There are a number of books that she owned in her library. She seemed to be very interested in poetry, history, and travel. At least that's in my impression from just browsing on the shelves. She had a copy of Whittier's poems, copy of Public and Private History of Napoleon III, a copy of William Seward's Travels Around the World. We own copies of her day book from 1895 to 1899. And of course, her cranberry glass luncheon set, which she gave away during her lifetime, and it came to us a number of years ago, returned to the university as part of an estate.
Oh, how nice.
So she didn't actually donate it originally to the university.
Someone else donated it back, realizing it was important to the university.
And of course, we have a collection of images of Mrs. Bradley and her husband Tobias on file.
Neat.
Not all of them in her old age. We actually have some images of her as a younger woman.
Well, that's nice, because that's all you ever see is her as an older woman.
That's true.
So it's nice just to know there was some of her as a young woman.
Right. And we also have, to move on, we have what we call the Chase collection, materials that relate to or pertain to Bishop Philander Chase, who was the first Episcopal Bishop of Illinois and founder of both Kenyon and Jubilee colleges. People here are probably familiar with Jubilee College.
Oh, yes.
It's a large collection, 2,600 manuscript letters from Chase and his family, dating from the 1820s up into the early 20th century, because it does include family correspondence as well as his personal correspondence, even though he died in 1852. There are hundreds of books and pamphlets included, and a first edition of Chase's Reminiscences, published serially in 1841. There are, of course, lots of things on church history, prayer books, hymnals, and part of this collection is the collection of the Citizens Committee to Preserve Jubilee College, which was organized in 1971. And we have a number of boxes of materials from the committee. All kinds of different wonderful historical things that are covered in their collection.
I can remember, and I'm sure you can, when Jubilee College had kind of become a pile of stones, and that was it. And what a wonderful job they did, and a lot of work they did to be able to restore that to the way it was. An important part of the history of this area.
Very important part.
Yeah. He was kind of coming to the wilderness.
There are even some informational books in this collection that my supervisor calls immigration guides. They're books on patterns of migration or travel across the United States. And we're actually using them to assist one of the classes offered on campus this semester, the Civ 112 class. So there are some materials from this collection that the students will be utilizing.
Using. And that's great. That is great.
Yeah. How about the Bennett collection? Did you know we have a
Know
Bennett?
I didn't know you had a Bennett collection.
Do you know who Mr. Bennett might have been?
No, I don't.
Charles A. Bennett. Now, that's an interesting historical name as far as Peoria is concerned. Do you remember Bennett Publishing?
Yes, I do.
Manual Arts Press
Yes.
Publishing, one
Yes,
and the
yes.
same. It's just changed names from Manual Arts Press to Charles A. Bennett Incorporated. Mr. Bennett was one of the founding members of the faculty, original member of the faculty,
Oh, okay.
Charles Alpheus Bennett. He was a pioneer in industrial arts education movement. And he was born out on the East Coast in Massachusetts in 1864 and educated as a mechanical engineer. He even did postgraduate work at Harvard and the University of Chicago.
Mm-hmm.
Of course, Mrs. Bradley was always on the lookout for the best candidates. And manual arts, manual training and vocation was very, very important to Mrs. Bradley. She wanted this offered at the schools that she established. So he came in 1897 to Peoria and mapped out the manual arts department and the courses of instruction for Bradley Polytechnic Institute. And he stayed with Bradley until 1920, when he left to devote his time 100% to the Manual Arts Press. He was the president of that and had founded originally in Chicago, and then it moved to Peoria. He was a very distinguished educator, artist, and writer. And he presented his collection in 1939 to the school.
To the school.
Wasn't quite a university yet,
Yeah.
I don't believe, but the school. There's lots of representative subjects in his collection, and it's of interest beyond the scope of local history.
Sure.
It has a nationwide interest. There are over 1,000 books and about 6,000 pamphlets in this collection. It's quite extensive. You'll find things on vocational education, woodworking, carpentry, drafting and mechanical drawing, foundry technology, machine tools and shop practices, even agricultural topics, farm mechanics. There's also a set of The Craftsman that's included in the Bennett collection.
That's wonderful.
Wonderful
That's a
periodical
thing
to have.
Yes, it is.
Yes, it is.
Well, it sounds as if his collection would be of interest not only to historians but to educators, methods they used to teach people, which, certainly the way things are going today, and so many of our kids right out of school and employed, it's a good thing. You can always learn from the past, and I imagine that is heavily used.
Manual arts was very important in that time period. Mrs. Bradley always felt that students coming to her school should be able to learn valuable skills. And this is one of the ways that
to do something.
Visualization was utilized.
Yes.
The establishment of this
Did he have anything to do with the watchmaking?
The manual arts buildings were over along Bradley Avenue, but the horology school was separate, and that would make an interesting discussion on a future episode for you. Yes.
I don't know if many people understand that Bradley started as a school of horology, which of course is watchmaking.
Well, Mrs. Bradley, before she established her school, brought the Parsons School to Peoria.
Okay.
And then when she established Bradley Polytechnic Institute, she set up not only a 2-year college, but she also set up the academies, which were upper level high school, I believe, would be an accurate description. And of course the School of Horology, which is now the Westlake Hall, which has just undergone renovation.
Yes,
Could
I
make
have to
another
get there to see
episode
that.
for you.
I would love to, if we could have images and people who can't get there. I know that there's Bradley grads across the world who would probably love to hear about that and see, and we could show them.
We could. Well, moving on.
Yes.
We have the Jack Bradley Photojournalism Collection. I told you we have a lot of photographic materials in Special Collections Center.
That's a gold mine if you have Jack Bradley's
Jack Bradley, as a lot of local people will remember, was a photographer for the Journal Star from the mid-1950s for about a 25-year period. And he donated about 1,000 of his images, most of them taken for like Sunday feature stories for the Journal Star over the years. And there's been a digitization project underway, and some of his images now can be viewed out on the internet. You can either come again to the Bradley University website and follow the links to special collections, or you can go out at http://collections.carly, that's CARLI.illinois.edu. And Carly collections are an archive of lots of digital images, not just collections at Bradley University, special collections. But you can view, search, or browse the collections. A lot of the images that are fun for me, I go out and I do a search on the subject of cemeteries or old farmhouses. There's a lot of rural photographs of abandoned buildings, of course, schools, parks, even animals. He's got a great shot of baby tigers out there. How cute. So this collection, the physical collection is photographs, some in slides, some in negatives, and all of the originals are part of special collections, but they're being made browsable by being digitized. That's the most exciting if browsable part. Is a word.
Yeah, that if you just, you can't get there, you don't have the time during the day to be able to get there and look for yourself, to be able to see that. It's a wonderful project to get some idea for the university
of what his work is like.
To the university to be able to do that. It's wonderful. And Peoria Public Library is working on some of those things too. I think at that same address we're working on getting a postcard collection up, but I'm not sure when that's available.
I believe some are already viewable.
Yeah. Yes. I haven't gotten the word on that, but I'll have to find out because those old postcards are fascinating.
Well, moving on, there is a lot of Lincoln material.
That's
Lincolniana, that's a big, big collection. And part of our Lincolniana collection is what we call the Martin L. Hauser collection. It's probably the largest group of materials we have on Lincoln. Mr. Hauser was a renowned Lincoln authority, student and collector. He was born in rural Emden, Illinois in 1871, and his family knew Abraham Lincoln. So as a very small child, he grew up with grandfathers, great Aunt Betsy, talking about the Lincolns. And he became a lifelong enthusiast and scholar. The collection is about 1,000 books and maybe about 300 pamphlets. It came to the university in 1950. He was also a writer, and he also had a club. He lived in a New Salem-style log house that's near ICC in East Peoria.
Fun.
On Oakwood Road. And I think there is still a log-style house
there
standing.
And
I'd love to do more research and see if it is actually the Hauser homestead. It was built as a replica structure, and the group called the Oakwood Club of Lincoln enthusiasts and scholars would meet there, and they would write, or Mr. Hauser would write, all kinds of guidebooks to Lincoln research. He wrote many different things, some of them on actually using his collection of materials. He wrote a user's guide to the Lincoln collection when he donated it to Bradley University.
Maybe that made your life a little easier then.
It does. His guides are extremely helpful because it is a vast collection. In fact, in 1950, when he donated the collection to the university, it was housed in its own special room on the second floor of the library building. Now it is moved into Special Collections Center. We have a number of his publications. He was a great collector as well of just general books published on Abraham Lincoln, and he specialized in collecting editions of books that Lincoln was known to have either owned or read. during his lifetime.
Okay.
In fact, I think he actually might have owned one or two of the actual books that Abraham Lincoln at one time.
Yeah.
We were able to mount a display in the atrium of our library building in the early winter, kind of a teaser for the premiere of Steven Spielberg's Lincoln epic motion picture.
Yes.
Some of the interesting books that we placed on display were the Revised Laws of Indiana, 1824, which was the very first law book that Lincoln would have ever read. And these are editions, same editions of the books he read, not necessarily the actual book.
Not the book he read, but exactly what he would have read.
But the exactly same edition of the book. We were also able to display a copy of Dilworth's New Guide to the English Tongue, the very first spelling book that Abraham Lincoln would have had access to, Pike's Arithmetic, Gibson's Surveying. Lincoln was a surveyor, of course, so these works were familiar to him. He either was able to borrow them from people he knew or in his life actually have them in his own personal collections. There's a copy of a book that he kept on his desk in Washington. I believe it was, let's see, which one? It was Oliver Wendell Holmes, a book of poetry, or works of Oliver Wendell Holmes. He was a fan of Holmes. And The Missouri Harmony, that's an interesting book. It's, I guess, a musical book.
Oh, okay.
In those days, he would have been familiar with singing when he lived in New Salem.
Because that's pretty much the only music people had, was music they made themselves.
Music they made themselves, a cappella, not necessarily accompanied by instruments. Kind of in the vein of what's known as sacred harp music, where the music is written for multi-parts to be sung, like the melody and then the tenor and bass parts and alto parts. And it's written with notes of different shapes.
Shape note singing.
Shape note singing, exactly.
I was always fascinated to find out that I have a relative whose family went to Jamaica, to the Caribbean, I think, and taught shape note singing. And I didn't know what that was. And the easy explanation of, if you've ever seen the movie Cold Mountain, there's a section in that where they're all singing a cappella, but they're doing the shape note singing. So that's interesting to know.
And Abraham Lincoln was familiar with that style.
Do that, all right.
And we have an example.
Oh, that's wonderful. Well, Linda, thank you so much for joining us. I have to cut you short. You'll be back, I'm sure. Everybody is free to enjoy the special collections at Bradley University and at Peoria Public Library. If you're doing research just for your own pleasure or for a project, these are two great places to go, and we cooperate back and forth and tell you who has what. So be sure to visit both sites on the internet, and we'll see you next week on Information Please.